So I have some brand new results from the laboratory. These results show that low oxygen in the brain may have something to do with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and cognitive problems. So if you have Gulf War illness or ME/CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, or long COVID, you should listen to these results. They may be applicable to you. So I'm Dr. Younger. I'm director of the Neuroinflammation, Pain, and Fatigue Laboratory. I'm a full-time clinical scientist. I use neuroimaging and blood tests and clinical trials to try to develop new treatments for chronic disease. So let me show you what we found. When we finish a project, it usually takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years to finish these projects. We do preliminary analyses, and that's where we clean up the data and we take an initial look. And that's what I'm showing you right now. These results have not been peer reviewed. They're not available publicly. This is just an initial look. So it could change in the final paper that's published, but that's unlikely. So these analyses were run a couple days ago by my medical psychology graduate student, Chloe Jones. And the particular analyses show that, or basically test whether cerebral perfusion has anything to do with chronic disease. And so we want to know, how well is oxygen reaching the different areas of the brain? Now, of course, you have to have oxygen for your brain to function. If you cut off the oxygen supply to your brain, you'll be unconscious in about 10 seconds. Now, we're not looking at that. We're looking more at chronic hypoxia, where there's enough oxygen reaching your brain to keep you conscious, but there's too low of a level of oxygen to operate at peak performance. So basically, your cognition and cognitive abilities are going to be impaired because there's not enough oxygen enriching the brain. So if you have low oxygen in the brain, you're going to have fatigue for sure, poor concentration, poor memory, probably headaches, and a few other symptoms as well. So we run these cerebral perfusion scans in all of our neuroimaging studies just to rule out hypoxia, because every once in a while, somebody will come in, do the scan, and they have extremely low oxygen perfusion. And that means their brain is not getting anywhere near enough oxygen. And that's probably what's causing their symptoms. So sometimes it can be urgent or an emergency, but usually that's not the case. It's just lower than normal and may be causing chronic problems. So to do that, we run what's called an arterial spin labeling scan, or an ASL scan. Now it's MRI based, so there's no radioactivity, there's no contrast injected, there's no injection of any type, there's nothing invasive. It's just magnets and radio frequency pulses. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, kind of with cartoons here. So we're looking for how well oxygen is flowing through the brain. The way we do that in the ASL scan is we send a radio frequency pulse at the level of the arteries, which you can see in this red box. And by doing that, we tag the hydrogen atoms by changing their direction just a little bit. We're basically putting a little bit of radio frequency energy into the hydrogen atoms, which is associated with the blood flowing through. We're then able to track how those tagged hydrogen atoms are flowing throughout the brain. So we have another part of the scan that's collecting data as these tagged hydrogen atoms are emitting that little bit of radio frequency energy that was put into them. And that's how we're able to track them. So one pulse puts a little energy into the hydrogen atoms, and the other part of the sequence measures it. Now, this doesn't change your cells. Again, there's no radioactivity. You can't feel it. It doesn't do anything that you can tell. It's something that lasts for a few seconds and just changes a little bit of the properties of the hydrogen atoms. So very, very cool scan. Now, what we're looking at when we do that is how many milliliters of blood move through 100 grams of brain tissue every 1 minute. That's the standard way of assessing cerebral perfusion. And so the unit for that is milliliters per 100 grams per minute. And when we do that, we get a single number for the entire brain. So you're not going to see any cool brain pictures because there's only one number, and there's no way you can show that in the brain because it includes the entire brain. So a brain map wouldn't be useful. Now, what we're looking for here is a number that's close to 50. 50 would be considered normal. So anywhere above 50 is fine. But if you're in the range of 40 to 50, you're good. There's no issues with cerebral perfusion, at least according to this scan. If you're in the range of 30 to 39, that's not necessarily a concern, but it makes it more likely that you're having problems with proper oxygen in the brain. And so that might be what's causing your cognitive issues or your pain or fatigue issues. And then if you're in the range of 20 to 29, this was where we would start to get concerned that you may not be getting enough oxygen to your brain to really be healthy. And this is more likely to be causing your symptoms. And if you get below 20, you're really talking about more emergency situations where you can lose consciousness or have just outright neural damage. So anyway, we have new data in Gulf War illness. That's what we ran a couple of days ago. We also have new data on ME/CFS and fibromyalgia. And I'm going to present those data soon, but today I'm just going to present the Gulf War illness data. So that's what I'm showing first. Now, we looked at 20 men with Gulf War illness, and these are veterans of the 1990-1991 Persian Gulf War. We think there was toxic exposures that has changed the way that their brain operates. So there were 20 GWI patients, and then there were 18 healthy veteran controls. And so the controls went to the Persian Gulf War, but they did not get Gulf War illness. Now, since again, there's only one number per person, stating the results takes about 10 seconds. So let me go ahead and tell you what that is. And basically what we found is that we have the two groups, Gulf War illness and the healthy veteran controls. We found that the GWI group showed lower blood oxygen in the brain. It was statistically significantly lower in the GWI group. And that was significant. It was a t-test of 1.99 and a p-value of 0.05. So if we look again at those levels, the GWI group, you can see at the bottom here, had a overall blood oxygen level in the brain of 37.6. This is the cerebral perfusion score. And so that puts us in kind of this kind of caution area of low oxygen. Not necessarily acutely concerning, but it is suggestive of an issue where maybe the problems that they're dealing with is caused by low oxygen in the brain. So it may or may not be related to their symptoms, but it is suggestive of an issue. Now, one important caveat is that everyone is laying down for this scan. So they're in a prone position, and that's because there really are no scanners where you're sitting or standing. At least there's no research scanners. And so we don't know what their cerebral perfusion is when they're, for example, standing, and it could be completely different. And the reason I say that is because when you're laying down, your blood is not having to fight against gravity to reach your brain. And so you're probably going to have less of an issue with cerebral perfusion when you're actually laying down like you are in the scanner. And that's the reason why, if you get problems with dizziness or some other problem that's caused by low oxygen to the brain, laying down a lot of times can help. And that's because it's easier for the blood to get through the brain. That's not always the case. It's more complicated than that. But that's just something to keep in mind, that it could be that some of these people looked like they had just mild hypoxia laying down, but then if they stand up and try to walk around and try to do stuff, that hypoxia might be more severe. That's a possibility, and it's really hard for me to test. As I mentioned, they don't have research scanners where you're standing up. Now, there are clinical MRI scanners where you can sit or stand, and those are great devices, but I don't have access to one of those. And even if I did, I don't think they're appropriate for research because we need higher resolution and better signal to noise ratios than you would normally see in a clinical scanner, because we're looking at really, really small regions, and we need really high resolution to be able to compare patients and healthy controls. So I don't think we can do that. Maybe somewhere in the world they have a scanner that's suitable, but I certainly don't have that available here. Now, also, like I said, I don't have nice pictures for you to look at least for this talk. I like to have nice new brain pictures. I'll have those in the future. But again, I don't have them here because there's only one number for the whole brain. Now, there's another approach at looking at oxygen perfusion that we can do a brain map, and I can do that for this data set, but that will take a few more weeks to do. It's very intensive in terms of the computer processing, and interpretation takes a lot longer. So I would say that might be a couple of months out before I look at that, but we will do that as well. But for right now, we just have the overall brain number, which is probably in this case the most important number anyway. I don't have any reason to believe that people with chronic pain or fatigue are going to have certain locations of the brain that have low blood oxygen. That's something I would expect more with a tumor or with a traumatic brain injury. So I don't expect that with pain and fatigue, but we have to look at it because I might be wrong. And that would be really important to know if there's a specific region of the brain that has low oxygen perfusion. So that's it for today. The important note is now we have some results that suggest that GWI patients have low oxygen in the brain. And if that's true, that could indicate particular treatments that have never been tried before for Gulf War illness. Now, again, I'm going to run this, or we are running it right now in chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and we might find the same thing in that condition as well. So we will know very soon. I think, again, probably in a day or two, I'll know what that looks like, and then it'll take a few days of looking over all the results, and then I'll present that to you as soon as I'm confident that I have a clear story from those results. And I'll also decide what videos we do based on those results. So if I find that not only GWI, but also fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome have low cerebral perfusion, I'll probably need to do a few videos on how you might test that yourself. And if you do have hypoxia or poor cerebral perfusion, how you might treat that. That would be some useful topics. So in any case, I hope that is helpful information. I just wanted to share stuff as soon as it becomes available. So hope you found that informative, and hope you can catch up next week and see what else we have to present. I will talk to you soon.